Welcome back to the Coliseum of Fantasy Knowledge. This is the IDP Fantasy Empire. Going here, we're finally here, man. It's Christmas Day, it's early morning. It's here, week 1 is finally here.
Yeah, and just like Christmas, this fantasy season has come from nowhere. Honestly, with work, with school, and everything else, I am so far behind. We still have to get those ranks out tonight, or today, and uploaded to our website for the IDP side of the football. We had a couple listener questions we're going to go ahead and talk about. I'm going to complain a little bit about Khalil Mack. Another listener question about the premium podcast and what we plan on doing. We are open for suggestion. If you guys have better ideas for what you guys want to do, we'd like to do those about every 4 weeks or so. We've been asked about the draft kit update and the strength of schedule as well. So we'll jump right in. No major news to really report at this time. A lot of lower level guys that are getting bumped up and may get some starting time, and that will be in our ranks. You'll be able to see who's starting over who. We will list out, hey, Earl Thomas is probably not going to play. I think the Seahawks had went ahead and ruled that out. But our first listener question was from A. Santana. It was, is Kaiser White likely to start week 1? Kaiser White is a linebacker / safety for the LA Chargers. I'm surprised I actually got that right this time. I usually say San Diego still. And will he be a 3-down linebacker 4 weeks to come? At this point, in what we saw in preseason, I don't think Kaiser White is going to be the starter. I think they're going to give the nod to Hayes Pollard. I really wish that Kaiser White would have solidified himself as a starter, but I'm not really seeing anything as of note. What are your thoughts on Kaiser White and him locking down a starting role this week and weeks to come?
I think it's going to be a hard road, but if he proves to the coaching staff, probably through special teams, that he can be out there on the field and be a liability and not a liability, just be reliable, that's all you really got to do. Kaiser White had a lot of good tape. Again, he's from the White family, in case you don't know, Kevin White, the guy who's usually injured on the Bears. And his other brother, who I'm just spacing on the name, but it starts with a K as well. They're all in the NFL. Cream, thank you. They're all in it. I like Kaiser White's talent. I think he has the chance to get in eventually. But this backfield is pretty set, and the linebacking core is pretty good. But we've seen injuries time and time again with the Chargers in the backfield. So I don't know if it's going to be week 1, but week 2 they might start working him in sub packages and then see where it goes from there.
Our next question is about Markel Lee. Again, another question from A. Santana. Do I think he's going to start week 1? I do not, because I think Derek Johnson's going to get that nod. I don't really know what the Raiders are doing, especially after trading Khalil Mack. Paul is looking at me, just shaking his head. As you all know, I'm a Raiders fan. Was a Raiders fan.
Hey, still said he was. You heard it. He still is. I'm telling you.
But losing Khalil Mack, I really don't know what the Raiders are doing, what they plan on doing this season and years to come. We have not been productive with our draft picks in years past. So us hitting on Khalil Mack and Derek Carr in the same draft, it's one of those things, can we or will we ever do that again? Is John Gruden going to be in charge of drafting players? I don't know. I really don't know what the hell is going on with the organization with us moving to Vegas. And
I love the move to Vegas, man. They got a hockey team that went to the finals. I mean, I feel like it's going to start all in one. I think it's going to be a fun deal.
But my thing is, you don't do that to a fan base. You're going to start losing people that are going to buy your season tickets.
I don't know. I feel like the diehards are still going to stick around. Like, just because... I mean, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of moving except for recently, with the Rams moving. But, I mean, St. Louis was a dying fan base even in where they were at then. But you still heard from the people who were upset when they're moving. Same with the Chargers going to L.A. But the thing is the money's not there, so you got to put it somewhere. But I like the Raiders move to Vegas. I think that makes me want to go to a Raiders-Packers game eventually. On the whole Markel Lee issue, again, I defer to Buck in these. I think he's right. I think Derek Johnson will be the guy who comes in and plays first. We know how John Gruden loves his older guys, so he's going to probably throw out them vets first. That's just what he does.
I thought Derek Johnson looked really good in the preseason with the run.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we've seen later on in his career. He isn't as explosive as he used to be, not picking those balls like we once saw whenever he was a young buck. Daniel Rongemark, pardon me, I'm not familiar with the spelling, asked what linebacker 3, linebacker 4s have the upside of LB2s, and I'm going to assume that's this week and season long. As we go ahead and move through that, we've got a couple players. One of them is Danny Trevathan. We have him listed at about 35 or 40 on our season-long takes. Paul, you mentioned him week 1. What are your thoughts on him as an LB2 week 1?
Again, there's going to be a lot of hype behind the Bears, which we'll kind of cover if we delve into Khalil Mack more. But the thing is that what we don't know in Chicago is, one, their rookie sensation, Roquan Smith, missed some time in training camp, and he also had a tight hammy earlier this week. We don't know if he's going to be the tackle monster we're thinking of when he got drafted. Mm-hmm. The guy who's going to pick up those tackles is going to be Danny. He's going to be the guy who's been there and will continue to pick up tackles. So he has the upside of being able to plug in week 1, if not week 2, because, again, we don't know what's going to happen because all this is now congealed together with the Mack trade.
And not only that, but another thing that happens to some of these young guys, granted, Roquan Smith was a dog in and of himself whenever he was in college. Whenever they get to the pro level, it's not uncommon to get jitters that first NFL game.
Yeah.
And the lines kind of start to blur. You start to get tunnel vision. And that's one of those things where Danny Trevathan has that experience where he can flow through the game where Roquan Smith may be struggling to catch up. And even though we saw him look really good in preseason, but it doesn't have that same atmosphere that a real-life game does.
And also, it's who they're playing, and they're playing Green Bay, and they're going to be a team which Mike McCarthy runs the same system, which I can call on TV. He's going to probably come out and go run, pass, unless Rodgers is like, give me the ball, I'm going to throw it. So if he comes out, run, it may give Roquan maybe a little bit of momentum. But Roquan, to me, is also a finesse linebacker, and I don't mean that in a bad sense, but he's a guy who can maneuver his way very well. Danny is more of a downhill, smash you in the mouth type of guy. So if they're running a blitz on that side where Danny is on the inside, there's a good chance that he's going to get in there and get the run stuffs. Because right now, Aaron Jones is going to be on the suspended list for 4 weeks, so they're only coming in with Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams. I don't trust Ty Montgomery right now, so it's probably, I feel like, more of a Jamal Williams. And eventually, if it's not working, they're going to go to pass, and hopefully Danny doesn't get cross and hit someone in the helmet, because then he'll be ejected.
Another guy we've got on here is TJ Watt. We have him in the late 30s. I know he was one guy that you wanted to list. What are your thoughts on him being an LB2 this weekend, season long?
Well, you got Buck's favorite player, John Bostic, in there. You don't know. I think TJ Watt's way more athletic and way better of a upstart than John Bostic is, and we don't really know what's going to happen in this linebacking core. It's a toss-up. But I think TJ Watt could easily go out week 1 and prove himself to be, the guy and be able to get those tackles. Because this is only year 2.
Right.
So, I mean, there's still a lot of unknown stuff, but I feel like this is his first step into it. And they're playing the Browns. So I feel like the Browns, we don't really know what we're getting on offense, but I feel like they're going to pound the rock.
Well, you have Jarvis Landry, who's your quick slant guy, working from the outside in. TJ Watt's probably going to be there over the top. I know we always talk about our thoughts on 3-4 outside linebackers and how they get less tackles, whereas inside linebacker in a 3-4 is going to get most of your tackles. Guys like Vince Williams and John Bostic. Vince Williams is a tackle hog. John Bostic is really that run stuffer. But TJ Watt does offer a lot of upside. I know last season, whenever he got hurt, he was making a great rookie campaign. We saw him with 3 picks in the first 2 to 3 games.
Yeah.
So I think TJ Watt adds a different element depending on what type of league you're playing in. He's not necessarily going to be a high producer in tackle only, but in big play, he offers the opportunity for sacks and interceptions, forced fumbles, what have you.
Yeah.
Malcolm Smith, we have him right at about 40. I think he can be an LB2, an LB1 even. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for this, but With Reuben Foster showing us that he has a huge problem with injuries and then suspensions as well, I would not be surprised if Malcolm Smith takes all these tackles from Fred Warner, even though a lot of people are saying, hey, go get Fred Warner. On his tape, I wasn't as impressed as a lot of people seem to be with Fred Warner, whereas Malcolm Smith has proved it with the Raiders and the Seahawks in years past. And again, he was injured most of the season last year and didn't have those tackles that really pop up whenever you're looking through last year's stats. Mm-hmm. I think he's a steal, honestly.
Rack him. Sounds good to me. I like it.
I know Darren Lee and Avery Williamson were ranked right about the same spot, about 41, 42 in our season-long projections. I know most of that was because of our risk assessment. You know, don't move one up too far because then it takes you away from where they finish season-long. We could really see that going either way. The tension really is like two Rams coming together with their clinched heads. Who's going to give? You know. If you were to pick one season long, who would you pick as an LB2?
Darren Lee.
Darren Lee?
Mm-hmm.
He's a Buckeye, but I would honestly say Avery Williamson.
See, and I knew you were going to go Avery, so I wanted to go Darren Lee, yeah.
The only problem I have with Avery Williamson is his risk or his injury history. If he could clean that up and be healthy a whole season, I would not be surprised if he was an LB2. I would have ranked him as such, you know. But that's his biggest problem that we saw in Tennessee.
I think what helps Darren Lee this year is they honestly don't have the same defensive line as they had last year. I feel like their defensive line is a little bit weaker, so I feel like a lot of these running backs are going to get through the first level and get to the second level. And I feel like that's going to equal hopefully another 4 or 5 extra tackles that he wouldn't be getting if the defensive line was still good.
Last guy up, Shaq Thompson. I know he's your boy.
I love Shaq Thompson, man. The reason that I believe he'll have the linebacker 2 is because Davis is going to be out with a suspension for PEDs. So the first 4 weeks, I feel like he's a solid guy to start if you're in a deeper IDP and you want someone that really probably not a lot of people may talk about, because there are probably a lot of people who still drafted Todd Davis just because they're used to the name cachet. But Shaq Thompson is a guy who I think is the guy who's ready to ascend in that spot. And I'm kind of been hoping the same thing with Fontes over in Cincinnati, is someone to just kind of step into that role because he's suspended and just take it over, because they're both older. But I feel like Shaq Thompson, if he really proves himself in these first 4 weeks, he could be a season-long stand, and then they may just rotate Todd Davis in.
Right.
Best case scenario.
I don't see that, but I would not be surprised if Shaq Thompson played the opposite side. Thomas Davis played strong side. Shaq Thompson played weak side, which I believe they have done in years past.
Yes.
But I think you're talking more about sub-packages.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, I'm not going to disagree with you on Shaq Thompson. We've been seeing him building up all the flares coming. We have 3 last things we want to talk about. This podcast is going to be a little bit shorter. Our goal is to get those ranks up as soon as possible for y'all.
We got to hit on Khalil Mack, because you haven't given your real thoughts on this yet.
My thoughts on Khalil Mack, I am so upset because I think he's generational talent. I think he's a Hall of Famer, and I am disappointed that the Raiders moved on from him, especially after moving to Vegas and spending all of our money on Derek Carr, a guy that is above the Andy Dalton line, something that a lot of people rate quarterbacks on. Are they better or worse than Andy Dalton? But I don't think he's the Aaron Rodgers that a lot of people try and pat him on the back and say that he can become. Watching NFL Network, listening to a lot of Draftniks and everybody else, they like to say that Derek Carr has that potential. But Derek Carr's biggest problem has always been his footwork and his delivery. He's one of the faster release quarterbacks, and I think that's one thing that kind of helps him. But
I've always seen more Brett Favre than Aaron Rodgers, if we had to compare the two.
Yeah.
He sometimes makes bad decisions.
Yeah. Like taking all the money from the Raiders and not caring, and then beating his chest about God. Sorry, I love it. I hate Derek Carr, man.
I love it, man.
I think we should have drafted somebody else, honestly, and he should have been the one moving on instead of Khalil Mack, because I do not think that we're going to get half of the talent, especially with what we've seen from the Raiders and how we've struggled to find talent, either on the waiver wire or free agents or draft.
And then I don't know if you read the report, but I guess the Rams were really pushing to get Khalil Mack, but the Raiders were afraid that they weren't going to have high enough draft picks. So that was one of the main factors going to the Bears. Could you imagine if the Rams would have gotten Khalil Mack on top of everything else?
That would have been nasty.
That would have been ridiculous, man. That would have been one of the best defenses, if not best assembled. You'd have the 2 highest paid defensive ends.
Yeah.
God, that'd be ridiculous.
But another thing about that is you have Khalil Mack and a second going for 2 firsts. So you're practically trading Khalil
Mack. 2 firsts and 1 other pick.
Well, like a third.
Yeah,
fifth,
like
or
something
whatever.
else thrown in, yeah.
But I don't really count anything past the 3rd round. So you get 2 firsts. One of those could possibly be Khalil Mack. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be Khalil Mack.
I'm surprised they didn't go for someone like an actual player in this trade, player for player.
Right.
Like a Danny Trevathan to go over there.
And the other pick is just like hey, this is what Khalil Mack's worth. But I feel like the second is what we talk about in fantasy. Like, oh man, if only he would take a little bit less, or a little bit more, and I could get this trade to go through. That second really means nothing, especially if you're already sending Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
When you're just getting 2 firsts.
And my 2 cents on it is I woke up and looked at my phone and it said it went to the Bears, and I woke up and I walked around this house going, nope, way. And I was saying it over and over again because that was the flip side of what I was hoping for. I was really hoping to wake up to say that, that Khalil Mack was going to Green Bay because we had the 2 first-round picks, and I was thinking that's what it would cost. And I just kept saying, man, mac and cheese. That just sounds so good, mac and cheese. And I wake up, and he's not even there. And he goes over to the freaking Bears, where we now have to play him week 1, and now we're going to have to hear about it. And someone sent out on Twitter, this is now, up there with, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady versus Darrelle Revis. This is now like Khalil Mack versus Aaron Rodgers. I think it's going to be interesting, but we're going to see for sure on Bulaga if he's going to be 100% healthy or not. Mm-hmm. Because I've been talking crap on Bulaga all offseason to my other Packer fans that I talk to, because I don't think he's fully healthy. We're going to be able to see, but last time he played Khalil Mack, he handled him, and that was in Oakland. So I'm hoping that carries forward.
Word.
Play him twice a year.
Those last 3 things. Draft kit update. We've been asked by 2 people, surprisingly, if we were going to have an update before the start of the season. At this point, I don't think we are going to, just because we didn't see enough change. There weren't enough injuries that really changed a lot of things, and there weren't a lot of guys that we had projected to start that didn't end up starting. So at this point, no draft kit update. We're going to start switching from the draft season to the season long. That's going to require more time weekly for our weekly ranks, and you'll be able to find that on our website, hopefully by noon today, especially with week 1 coming up. Our waiver wires as well, they should be up next week. When are you wanting to podcast next week? When are you wanting to do game recaps?
I'm hoping that maybe late Monday night, but again, I am off, end up being on Sunday, but my schedule has changed at work. So if it is not Monday night, it will most likely be Tuesday, for sure, because I will be off those days.
I know I'll be ready to go.
And I apologize. I'm working on my work schedule now. I'm fighting with them as of now to get Monday off so we can get this out to y'all.
Yeah. Premium podcast, we'd like to do one every 4 weeks. I believe that there are 4 seasons to fantasy football. I was talking to Paul about that a couple weeks ago, how the defense kind of starts out better first 4 weeks, and then they move into the passing where you start to get chemistry between quarterbacks and wide receivers. They start executing. And then the last 4 weeks, you really have a huge push for running backs. We've seen LaShawn McCoy go off. We've seen Le'Veon Bell go off at the end of seasons. That's whenever you want to start considering running backs in your trades. But in our premium podcast, we want to start talking about trends that we're seeing between certain players. I know there's going to be a little bit of that whenever we do our waiver wire podcast. And those of you that have not been around whenever we do our waiver wire podcast, you're going to hear a bunch of names. These are going to be more precise, and really we're going to be answering a lot of listener questions in our premium podcast.
Yeah, we want to hear from you guys throughout the season, so please get on. Even drop us reviews on anything, Podbeam, iTunes, Google Play, anything. Drop it in the website, send us an email, hit us on Twitter. There's so many ways to reach out. Have your voice heard because you'll be heard on the show.
Right. Speaking of getting your voice heard, please give us some sort of idea if that's not the way that you'd like to see those premium podcasts go. Again, every person who pays for those premium podcasts has a bid on what they would like to hear. Strength of schedule, we've been asked about this by a couple of people. I know we keep giving this answer, but honestly, it's just been preseason. There's nothing really to take from preseason from the stat crews because nothing has changed. The way our strength of schedule works is all based on the stat crew and how they are judging and assessing games. I know it's very subjective and it changes week to week depending on how they view tackles, especially with these new rule changes.
And
is that gonna impact it? Are they going to see more dead balls and honor less assists, or are they going to go ahead and honor more assists?
And that was something I was going to bring up at the end of the show was it's not a bad idea to go see who's officiating what games this week because there's a lot of officiating changes. A lot of guys are tired. A lot of guys are coming up. So look at those ones because a lot of these ones are younger. They're going to probably make a lot of preemptive calls that they may not make later in the season, but just like officiating seasons, in the first 3 weeks, you're going to see more penalties drop just like we saw in the preseason because they still haven't figured out a lot of these rules yet.
Right. Not only that, but if your dude makes a tackle and there's a holding call, it gets negated.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly.
So keep that in mind.
I still expect us to at least have 2 ejections on the first week. I'm still thinking there's going to be 2
throughout
on
the
defense.
League? Oh, okay.
Yeah, not per game. No, I'm talking like, you know
I'm
how...
pretty sure the Steelers don't play the Bengals, man.
If they did, we know for sure it would be. But no, I'm just saying I would watch for that because they're going to be guys that are going to be still in their old ways, and I feel like they still don't know the rule that they're trying to implement. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of that, and there's going to probably be some upset people come Monday, Tuesday morning.
Also, look for our Week 1 ranks on our website, idpfantasyempire.com. Again, it should be up Thursday by noon, so you can get your rankings from us. There are a lot of other great people in the industry doing it as well. Don't take us as the gospel. One thing we do strive for is we try and give you the advice that we ourselves would use week to week.
Yeah, don't think of us as gospel, but please drink the Kool-Aid. So anything, Week 1, Eagles, Falcons, who you got?
Eagles, Falcons. I've got Eagles.
I'm going to go in Atlanta in the upset, man. We don't know if Nick Foles is going to be 100% or what's going to happen. I'm going with the Falcons in the upset of the Super Bowl champs. All right, that wraps up this podcast. And again, we'll be back to you. Get in touch. And as always, start building your empire today.